I interview every single person that we hire in this company because I want them to have a connection with me. So when things don't feel right for them, that they don't hesitate to call me, even being the CEO and saying, I'm not saying that this is wrong, but this is how I feel and this is what I'm seeing.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning! This is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening and or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory walks, I want to talk to some of our leaders and just give a slight misnomer or warning or whatever, that if your health is not good, it doesn't matter how much money you make. And oftentimes and I was guilty of it. So I eat out a lot. I like to eat out and I like fine dining. I like to go to nice restaurants and stuff. But they don't really cook for health. They cook for taste. So, if you're eating out, your cholesterol, my cholesterol went up. I had a little slight blood pressure problems, everything. And it was really because of, you're running, and you feel like, well, let me just grab this, or let me just grab that, let me grab this. And you're tired, you're not factoring in movement or workouts or any of those things that help us to stay healthy. And we have underlying conditions that we may not never necessarily tend to, and until they throw us down. So, today we're going to be talking to someone who spent many years in the healthcare industry, and we don't want to put money in their pockets. And that's just really not trying to put them out of work, but we don't want to put money in their pockets. I grew up in a family. My grandmother passed away when I was 15 years old, and she died from food conditions, really, basically. She had diabetes, like everything that you can get from diets. And I was talking to my class the other day. Well, I was teaching at the senior facility, and I was telling the seniors, we talk about traits of things that are handed down. And like, you can have a diabetic trait in your body. You can have, you can be inclined to have hypertension or high blood pressure because of your family's dynamic. But I want you to really think about this. Is it the trait or is it the diet that we hand? Because it's the diet that causes the thing that manifests, right? So we're handing down diets that causes diabetes. We're saying that this is good. This is what I ate, your grandmother ate it. So if we switch mindset, if we switch diet, will we hand down the trait? So I don't know if it's necessarily the trait or it's the way that we consume. I don't want to be disparaging, but it really has high-end executives, people who are living hard, fast-paced lives, who feel like, I'm gonna just grab this. Just take a few moments. There's two things in the day that you will do that should be sacred. One, you should take a few moments to just breathe. Really just, when they say smell the roses, really breathe. Not in through the mouth, in through the nose. It's just nice, big breath. Breathe out a few times just so that your body can relax and your digestive and everything. And the second thing is to take the time to really eat. Not just be grateful for the food, but the energy around the food, whoever prepared the food, like what the food is supposed to do to the body. It's supposed to be fuel and nourishment for the body. And if you took the time to think about, am I eating, is this nourishment? or am I just eating because I'm feeling a void, I'm hungry? And my grandmother used to say, I'm like, oh, like, NaRon, anytime we eat, I'm like, I'm not hungry. She's like, you don't eat when you're hungry. By the time you're hungry, it's too late. You'll eat anything. We don't, we've been conditioned to wait to eat till we're hungry and we eat too much, or we grab whatever we feel to eat. To showing if you're hungry and you go food shopping, you're going to overspend. You're gonna load up the shopping cart with junk food. Quick things, because you want to satisfy your hunger. Christopher, how are you, sir?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for joining. First of all, can you let our audience know what it is that you do and who you are, and we'll jump right into it?
Sure. My name is Christopher Swing. I'm the president and CEO of Vantage Surgical Solutions. And basically, what we are is a mobile service that provides the equipment, products, and people for cataract surgery and for GI, so colonoscopies, inside of hospitals and surgery centers in the eastern 25 states of the US.
Well, that's good, but you have a long history of being in the healthcare industry. And what are some of the things that you've seen and that made you settle into this particular field of healthcare?
Yeah, so I've been in a lot of different places in my career, and one of the things that I settled into this for is because of a lot of what you talk about on this podcast, which is, you know, success and how to visualize success in our lives. And so, what I think is important is that people really evaluate what success is like to them. And I know I've heard you say it multiple times, Neuron. It's not the same for every person. We have this visualization in our country that the American dream looks like this, right? It's a house or a expensive car or whatever. And I can just tell you after having the ability to have all of those things that none of that really provides the joy that you guys talked about with Aisha Makara. And I think it's really important that people visualize, what's really truly important to them. And I'm a big Seven Habits guy from Stephen Covey. And so I like to begin with the end in mind, which is, where am I going? What do I want? Because if you don't shoot for something, you won't hit anything, in my perspective. And so, what's important to me, and how do I find that joy, which is, in my opinion, after spending a lot of time chasing after a lot of different things in a lot of different industries and businesses, that's really what's important.
When you touch on joy and goal setting, beginning with the end in mind, and all those things, you had an opportunity to see firsthand what it was that you wanted to do. Talk about your journey when you realize, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but this is just specifically where I want to be. Because sometimes people just say, I want to be in business. The medical field is vast. You could have done anything. You could have sold surgical towels. You could have sold gloves. You could have, but what was the journey like when you were deciding that this is the portion of the industry that I want to be impacting?
Yeah, so I'm going to go even a step further back, if you don't mind. And that
Yeah.
is that I knew that I wanted to run businesses.
Mhm.
And so I needed to have a vision of what was going to make me different than everybody else, that was going to enable me to have the trust of someone to turn over a business to me. And so
Mhm.
what I decided along the way was that I'm really analytical. I would say that the two strengths that I have, I'm real risk reward analytical, and I'm also an accountant. And those are two things that people don't really love unless you're really good at it for some reason. And so I went to school for accounting. I ended up getting an MBA, and I did all of those things for the purposes of running businesses. I became an entrepreneur by chance. So I was running about a 1.4 billion dollar business where I was the finance guy, investing between 65 and 90 million dollars a year in the food industry. And though that was awesome and it was phenomenal, what I found out was that, I in my plants we had like 3,000 people. And so I knew zero right? I mean, my objective was to manage balance sheets and things like that. And that didn't provide me with a lot of joy. I was good at it. I mean, we were very successful and I moved on from there, but I moved on to a place where I can know my staff, where,
Mm.
we're still pretty big. I mean, we've got like 80 plus employees, but I know each one of them. I interview every single person that we hire in this company because I want them to have a connection with me. So when things don't feel right for them, that they don't hesitate to call me, even being the CEO and saying, I'm not saying that this is wrong, but this is how I feel and this is what I'm seeing. So then jumping into healthcare, so I started in the healthcare business. I had a great mentor and she really helped me to visualize, what was important. And along the way, she helped me to acquire almost half of her business from her siblings. And then we ultimately sold it to private equity. And then I stepped back and they actually brought in a portfolio CEO for a while to run the business. And eventually they realized that our investment thesis wasn't actually being successfully implemented. And so they made me the CEO and
Mm.
now that's my focus.
What's the difference between running someone else's business, like I'm bringing you in to run a business, and now you have your own? Because sometimes people think that that's one and the same.
Yeah, so it's way different, right? I'll tell you that I've never been in a situation where I don't have a boss because if it's whether it's my counterparts like partners or investors or my wife, I've always got somebody that ultimately I'm responsible for. And I think if you keep that in mind, right, it's not terribly different, but I will say that, the risk reward that you're willing to take when it comes to your own assets are different than when you're dealing with somebody else's. So kind of to further on that same thought, I would just say after working for myself, I'm not sure that I could work for other people anymore. But I say that tongue in cheek because I kind of do. I mean, I'm still running a private equity business that is partially by me and partially by my former partner, but then also by this private equity company. The difference though is that my relationship is very similar to the way it's been in the past and the way that we operated the business when we owned it. And that's kind of their expectation for me. That's not true in many cases. I've worked for private equity in the past before my role here at Vantage, and most of them do not operate that way. But in this particular relationship, it works that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you have an amazing story of resiliency and overcoming, and then knowing that, hey, in order for me to be successful, I have to understand numbers. I have to. I'm going to accounting school not to be an accountant, but to really further along my ability to run business and understand the analytics, not just the business, but the analytics of finances. How important was that portion of your life? And I know you still have to lean into it, but how important was that? And usually accountants are more analytical, whereas entrepreneurs are more visual and visionary, forward thinking. Accountants are to the numbers. How do you wrestle with that, being a visionary and someone that's still to the numbers?
Yeah, that part kind of sucks, right? Like, because you know exactly what I'm talking about too, because you have this vision, right? And the numbers people are always like, all you've got to do is tell me how it works on paper, and as soon as you do, like, we'll sign off and move forward. And it's good to have the skill set because I can struggle through some of that on my own. Whereas a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of, CEOs that are trying to execute on vision, they're relying upon somebody else's perspective as to whether or not what they're wanting to do will work. And a lot of
Mm.
times, I sit there and it's like, I want to do this, and I know the math doesn't work. So how do we tweak this idea to the point where the math does work? Because I mean, let's be honest, nobody wants to go to work to lose money. I mean, nobody wants to go to work to create a new product that you can't execute on it. And I'll just say this. if you start a new product and you can't make money at it, you'll never make money at it, right? Like it's just one of those things where it's like if you can't charge enough to have enough margin into a product where you can make money when you're different than everybody else, just wait till everybody else is trying to do what you're doing, and there's no way you'll make money at that point.
So, but he says it's so a matter of fact, but that's really the basis of business. Sometimes people say that they want to get into business for freedom. If you want to get into business for freedom, that's the wrong reason to get into business. You should get into business for profit because that's how you get the freedom, by creating profit. And if there's no profit margin in your products, business, services, then sometimes people start a business and they still exchange time for money because they can't really see the larger lens. Do you think that this is what gives you a competitive advantage? The fact that you can actually see the numbers, know how to, because you've built this company, or you and your team built the company, and you were one of the largest persons in the field. How did you build to that? Do you think it's because of the way that you think and the way that you can view the numbers, or was it a little bit of luck, or what was it? What's the secret sauce, Christopher?
I think the answer to your question is yes, NaRon. Yes, the answer to all of those things is yes. And I'll just say it this way, anybody that doesn't accept a little bit of luck along the way is crazy, because no matter how intentional we are, no matter how spiritual we are or faithful we are, no matter how well our plan is designed, no matter what it is that's important to us when we're going through these processes, there's a whole lot of luck involved. And let me just give you an explanation. So in 1991, this business was started by the founder of the company, and her vision was to bring advanced technology to rural healthcare. And we still do that today. I mean, that's our number one focus. We are more focused on solutions than we are the technology, but primarily a lot of people use our solution because of the technology that we have available. But today, that's 1.2% of our revenue in a multi-million dollar company.
Mm.
And if we hadn't changed course along the way, like 100 different times, we would not exist. I mean, the company would be zero. And so I think, it's a well-intentioned plan, having great people around you. I think you hit on it. My team is what makes this successful. I mean, I'm just one cog in a big group of people that show up every day with a lot of desire to really bring value. And I think that was kind of what you were hitting on earlier, NaRon, is the profit comes because you created value. Sometimes you can't charge as much as the value that you're creating, and eventually you've got to figure that out. But what we do is, in a rural hospital, they could own all of the equipment that we provide to them. But what they don't see is that 29 days of the month, this stuff's going to sit in a closet, and we can use that in 11 other facilities to drive value for them as well. And so a lot of people are like, well, I wouldn't want to lease equipment from you. I wouldn't lease a car. And I'm like, well, you can't lease a tire and get anywhere. Right. And so that's what we're a little bit different. So we share out the equipment to all these different facilities and thereby share all the costs amongst them. And then in exchange for the value that they normally would have paid for that equipment, then we provide them with really well-trained personnel that knows everything about the equipment, knows everything about their procedures, and really can elevate the experience that the patient has in a rural hospital throughout the country.
Do When you're doing this kind of lease shared agreement, just from a tax standpoint, does all the hospitals get that same benefit of the lease on taxes, or how does that
Yes.
work? Who gets the
So
credit?
we own the equipment ourselves, the company does, and then we just charge them per case. And so it's basically an OpEx expense, so that
Mhm.
it's coming right through their operating costs. So they don't actually get the benefit of owning the asset. But to be honest, like when you think about these assets, I mean, they have a relatively short life. And
Yeah.
so whether you buy the asset and depreciate over 5 years or whatever, or you just pay your portion of it, it's relatively the same in the end. It just comes down to, do you get a tax advantage for a few years until, until your depreciation is gone or whatever. So
How often do you how often do you see yourself changing the equipment out? For on your end, because you have to stay state of the art. You have to stay up to date. Are you least? If you can't answer, I don't want to know your competitors to know it. But how often do you have to upgrade?
all the time. I mean,
Mm,
you think about it, we're in a broad landscape where there's many manufacturers. We provide probably 15 to 20 different manufacturers, equipment and products in our services. And anytime anything comes out new, somebody wants to know, I want the newest bell and whistle. And we want them to have that. I mean, the benefit of technology, right, is that healthcare improves based upon the technology. Where it gets
yeah.
kind of ugly is the cost. But in general, like, you don't want to go to a hospital that's using really old equipment. You'd rather have the newest technology because it's the most advanced and usually the safest as well.
So
So we are
how do you
constantly.
constantly manage? So you're at the place now where you're something is happening all the time, because as we're speaking right now, someone's developing the next the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And you're constantly managing costs to the customer. How do you go in and say, all right, I know last week you came to me and for the rental was X amount of dollars, but now we got the XYZ 500 and it's going to just cost a little bit more. Do you have to always constantly have those conversations?
So we do, especially as the physicians kind of transition their strategies in what products that they're using. What we try to do is we try to navigate, how do we help offset some of the cost of a particular unit? And it's in the best interest of the surgeon to do that, because if we can make the cost net neutral to the facility, then they're more likely to be willing to, upgrade to the newer technology. And so what we do is we try to either convince the surgeons to bring more cases to the procedure day, or we try to get them to use maybe a non-branded product that does exactly the same thing, and it might even be better than the branded product, which will help to decrease costs. As you know, when you bring out a new piece of equipment that has disposables attached to it, not only does the equipment go up in cost, but so do all the products that you have to use related to that piece of equipment. The R&D seems to follow those new products no matter where they go. And so we spend a lot of time working with our physicians, we work with our facility staff to really try to make it as neutral as possible. And then, we just have those hard conversations and say, look, we're getting a lot of pressure to provide this latest technology. And how do you approach the physician? How do you want to approach this physician related to this request? Because in our business, our relationship is directly with the hospital or the surgery center. And so in most of those places, the physician doesn't have ownership. And so it really comes down to, it's not negatively impacting their pocket if in fact the costs go up, they still get paid the same. And so it's kind of one of those things where the hospital's going, look, my reimbursement reimbursement is not increasing fast enough to cover the cost of all these incremental things. The physician obviously wants it because he wants the best for his patients, and the hospital does too, but they have to figure out a way to pay for it, right?
So when if you sat down and looked at what you do, the simplest thing would be, well, I provide equipment for hospitals and surgical. But when we sit down and unfold what you do, you constantly have to train your staff on all of the latest equipment, so that there's a constant commitment to learning, training, rehearsing. Because the one thing that we can't do is send a piece of equipment into a facility and not know how the hell to use it, and somebody's cut open in the middle of the room. And we, the one thing you don't want to hear in the middle of surgery is oops.
For sure. And so let's debug some of that, right? So there's no such thing as fail fast in a surgery, right? Nobody
No.
wants to say, hey, come fail fast in my surgery and then figure out that you don't want to do that anymore. Like that's not going to work. So, I mean,
No.
some of the concepts that we think about, I would tell you that, and no surgery facilities do that, right? Like that's
Yeah.
just not the way it works. The the way to think of surgery is for the outsider, it's more like how they fly airplanes. So hardcore checklists, very regimented
Yeah.
procedures, very consistent. Like when we do these cases, we'll do somewhere between 5 and 40 of them in a day. And it is, extremely regimented, step 1 through step 40.
Mhm.
And so I think, yeah, it's definitely it's a different world than what we think of in the business side. We think of success from failure. And to be honest, that's really true of a lot of us, right? Is that we find success through our own failures. That's not how it works in surgery. And thank goodness for that, because then you have really negative outcomes for those people who help us to move a particular procedure forward. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it's very, very minimal. And rarely is that the causation of moving a technology forward.
So now you're building this business, and you start to see all of the moving parts. Right? You play an important role in you're like a key to the whole cog, right? So you not don't only have to come up with solutions for yourself, like you gave a solution earlier, and you did it in passing because you probably do it all the time, that you don't even really consider it, that you just offered a solution, and that's something that we can really expand upon. Well, you're saying to the surgeon, all right, so why don't you move all of the surgeries on this particular day, being that you're going to have the machine available to you on Tuesday and Wednesday. Just try to schedule in as many as you can on those days, so that when we remove the unit, we don't have to cause chaos. When did you realize that you had to be a solution based person, a problem solver, not just for your company, but for the people that you were? Because I think that's probably a competitive advantage also, is that you're a thinker, right? So you have to come
Yeah,
in with a
absolutely.
solution. When did
Yeah.
you know
So
that?
anytime you're
That
selling a service, right? Like
Mhm.
you have to visualize the customer's perspective of this. I mean, we're not, we have high integrity here. One of the things in our core values is integrity, and I usually tell people it's integrity with a capital I, like it's a focus of ours. And why that is because the worst thing that could happen is a salesperson go into a facility and not meet any of their needs, but get them to sign a contract to utilize our service, and then we get there and they're like, "Well, you didn't solve any of our problems." That's not what any good service does. A good service wants to understand how they can have positive impact within these facilities. And so, as crazy as it is, we like to visualize ourselves as we're out there trying to make sure that your rural hospital or your hospital in your area stays financially solvent. So that way, when something happens to your child or my child, if I live in your neighborhood, that we can go to the ER and have confidence that there's someone there that can support the care that we need at that particular moment. Now, for those of you who don't know, cataract surgery is not an emergent case, right? So these are far planned in advance. And I think what NaRon is trying to tell you guys is, if you think about all the things that we can do to improve a hospital's services, we are also improving their profitability, and we're also improving the surgeon's profitability by helping them to understand kind of the economies of scale. And just to give you some examples of that, I'll walk you through, a normal surgery morning for us. So we show up for the hospital about 90 minutes in advance of surgery. At an hour into the surgery day, we've probably done one or maybe started the second case. So we're 2.5 hours into our day, and the surgeon is similar. And we've only done like maybe 1.5 cases. But in the second hour of surgery, we probably do 3 more cases. So maybe
Mm,
so we had 1.5 done. We finished that one and did 3 more in that next hour. And then the next hour, we can sometimes do as many as 6. And so for a surgeon who understands that as the machine starts to slowly turn, those first couple of hours are really inefficient. Well, if he can maintain his focus and we can continue to drive cases through hour 4, 5, and 6. Now, once you get to the third hour, usually they don't get any faster. Like you're running at optimum efficiency. And how I would like you to think about that is every single person knows exactly what their job is on that particular task and that particular day. And they know what order those tasks need to be done. And they're like, they've mastered that task for everybody that's in that room. It's a process, right? So there's nurses, multiple nurses, a surgeon, anesthesiologist or CRNA. There's us, and then there's certified scrub technologists, which are hand and instruments. It takes us all a little bit of time to kind of get into a rhythm. And so the first hour, you're extremely inefficient. If you consider that we'd already been there for an hour and a half, we're really, really inefficient. And then as you get to the third hour, all of a sudden the machine is really starting to pick up steam. And then it runs until the surgeon is either worn out or we run out of cases, one of the two.
mm,
And so that surgeon that can do another 5 hours worth of surgery and make a full day of it, they can do a whole lot of cases. Like, for instance, we have a facility here in Central Illinois that did 42 procedures, 42 cataracts in a day with one surgeon in 2 rooms. Now, that is very abnormal, I'll just say. He's very skilled. He's one of those people that just has an amazing God given talent. It's not that he has to try. It's like he sticks his, instrumentation into the eye and voila, the cataract comes out and the new lens goes in and we move on to the next procedure. It's fun to watch that. And when you see it, you're like, wow, I just saw something that's very unique and I'm probably not going to see that again for a while. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways in which we help everybody in the process of cataract surgery or colonoscopies. It's the same, to improve their profitability, and that's part of what we bring to the table.
yeah, because most people think that hospitals are not in it for the profit too. Like the reality is you can't stay open, you can't be efficient if you don't make money. You can't be efficient if you don't have solutions to help people to sustain a profit or to broaden their profit margins. And the fact that you're in their hands on really, really doing this is an amazing feat. However, my question is, why are we podcasting? Like what is the message, the theme, the thing that Christopher Swing want everyone to know now?
So it kind of goes back to that question that I asked, which was, what is victory or what is success? And I've been blessed. Just to give you guys some perspective of my life, I was lucky enough to adopt a little girl from China, which brings tons of joy to my life.
Bless
I
you.
also support a lot of missions. So one of those is Developing Kids Ghana in Ghana, Africa. They are an organization that supports education of children in a country where sometimes the teachers can't read at a very high level. And so
Mhm.
there's times where the kids show up to class and they might read better than the teachers do. And so that's a really cool organization. The other thing is I'm very much fulfilled by others' ability, and the reason that I connected with you, NaRon. I think I want people to visualize where they want to go in their life, and I want them to find it. And however that happens. And two thoughts that I'd like to to give you guys is, you need to read The Millionaire Next Door if you haven't before. It's written by Thomas Stanley, and I'll just tell you that money doesn't work the way people think it does. Yes, maybe the super, super rich go out and can afford some of the luxuries that exist out in the world. But in general, most of the time, the people that are spending money on things that you covet are things that they can't afford. And unfortunately, that's how we kind of perceive success in a lot of ways. And I think that's a great way to really check yourself and understand. I'm a firm believer in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I love that book. I think it's a great book for a leader who's trying to figure out where they want to go. And then finally, I'm starting a podcast in January, and that podcast is faithful.buzzsprout.com. And it's kind of the interconnection of a lot of what's important in my life, which is my faith. And I know you're a pastor, NaRon, and also, just really how that affects how I lead people. And I want to know how other people are affected and how they lead based upon having faith and not just saying that you have faith, but actually having faith and letting that flow through you and be visible, to the world.
Well, congratulations and welcome to the podcast world. We are actually changing our One Ministries podcast to One Ministries Network podcast, and we're going to be highlighting conversations with people's faith centered around faith, testimonials, and have daily messages and all of that. So I'll be joining in that army also in January. We'll
Awesome.
sit you on there. I told you, everybody, we sit you at the feet of the masters. Listen, Christopher's information, the information for the podcast and everything is in the description. Usually I ask, what books do they read? But he already gave you his 2 books. So there you have it. We don't ask you for Cash Apps, Venmos, Zells, or any of those things. But what we do ask you for is that you hit like and subscribe. If this is your first time listening, a 5-star review and leave a review. Not, you can go to our website and leave a review there. And there you'll find Christopher's landing page. And on the landing page, you'll find all of his information. And let's go stalk his page. Let's go follow him on Instagram and all his social handles as he shares with us what it is that helps him lead with success. Enjoy the rest of your day. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk making excuses. Don't walk allowing your failures to define you. But Christopher now is a part of the Walk in Victory family, and we invite you to walk with us in victory as we build people from within. Enjoy. Peace.